Today, I'm going to show you how to create a hip-hop cover art featuring Big ZA himself, Bossman Dlow. If you ever wonder how to create cover art that grabs attention and elevates the music, you might want to stick around. Album covers are crucial. They immerse you in the world of the album before you even start listening. It's like a partnership between the visuals and the music, creating a perfect visual audio experience. Now, bad album art can just turn you away from music. I know you guys have seen art that's just like, I'm probably not gonna listen to that. They didn't take time to even craft a good art. Why would the music be any different? Every song, I believe, has a color to it, a feeling. And the best covers, they usually reflect that. So sometimes you can hear something, and then sometimes when you hear something, you could just see the color. Like it makes you feel cold. Like when you listen to Stan, the color was like a dark blues and blacks because it was a sad song. When you listen to songs like Happy, you see yellows and oranges and whites and happiness. Just keep that in mind, because whatever the covers you make, you want the cover to reflect what you're hearing. So let's create something that will do just that. Let's take what we're hearing and create a dope cover art. Every idea starts with sketch or some sort of concept in mind. If you listen to Bossman Dlow or you take a look, you have to take ideas from the artist itself. So for me, it seemed like Bossman Dlow has this like too slippery, wet, pause type of aesthetic. His chain is like a slippery when wet sign. He has a shark, and I see that often throughout his symbolism. So if I were to be hired for one of his jobs, that's kind of some of the creative I'd be leaning into. Now, if you see that happening after this video comes out, I'm not saying they weren't already thinking about it, but hey, you know, this was my idea. Pretty much just some clouds. I wanted like Moses parting the Red Sea, just because like when Bossman came, he came and like kind of really took the rap game by storm. So that was the idea behind this concept. So let's hop right into it and get into this Photoshop. I started off with a 4x5 canvas, which is 1200 by 1500, right? I just started placing some of the water elements. I got a lot of the water elements from Envato Elements. I got different waves, oceans, the sand. I used the clouds from my pack, and then I used the moon from Envato Elements. So for some reason, artists do not like having professional photos sometimes. Like unless you're like really big or established, finding really good high quality photos of an artist is very rare, especially trap rap artists. So anyways, I scoured the internet for this photo of a full body clean photo with him and his jewelry on, and all I did was use my polygon tool. I just started cutting him out, and then the next step was to start laying out the background. I think for this time around, what I was trying to do is lay out backgrounds and get my scene together before I started adding and blending any colors or adding any extra effects. I just wanted to get the layout really strong. If you've ever been to the beach when the tide is low, the water gives like this wet, sandy type of vibe. And I felt like if you were parting the sea, the sand wouldn't be all dry and cracked, because that wouldn't make any sense, because the sand would have just been wet because you just parted the sea. So I blended kind of like two images of sand into it. I used some of the island from one, and I used some of the ground for the other. And all I did was, like I said, just use a mask, and I masked it out. So we're doing non-destructive editing, remember you guys, so then you can go back and adjust things as you need fixed. I said before, I did use the clouds from my ODM cloud pack. You guys can, you know, check that out on the Only Dope Media store. I went for like a stormy cloud look because obviously the storm is coming. That was kind of the theme. Like I said, stormy clouds, rapid waves, stuff like that. So I wanted to add a grid because I wanted the perspective to be really correct when I added these waves in, like this all going to one perspective point. So all I did was go to view, show grid, and it'll give you like this grid, and then you can kind of lay your lines up for that. And all I did was use the line tool to go ahead and use a red line to get the right perspective that I wanted to. So then I can just align the waves along the red line. Now, these are the wave breaks. So I just typed in wave, beach, tide, mask out the wave, and erase the sand. So then all you have is that wave break, because that is going to be blended in into the ground. And then I didn't want the same one for the full thing, so I used a couple of different ones, and then I just kind of like blended them together. And now the good way to get the perspective right too was Control T. That's the free transform tool. So then you can adjust the corners, the perspective, and the skew. So then you can move it and shape it to what you want. And like with this though, this round 4, just play around with it. It doesn't have to be, like I said, perfect, but just make sure everything is aligned, at least the break up into that red line, because that's kind of where the artist is going to be standing. And then I do end up like moving the breaks further apart because I needed more space for Bossman. All I did was create a group for those and then copy, paste it, and then flip it. Copy, paste it, flip it, twist it, and reverse it. Okay. Then it's the same on both sides, so you don't have to keep doing the same thing over and over and over. Just warp it to where you need to warp it to using that Control T. So make sure it looks a little different. You don't want it to be perfectly symmetrical on both sides because that's just not realistic. Now, I felt like the wave was cool that I had, but I felt like it was a little bit too much going on. I wanted a little bit of a calmer vibe for the actual wave itself. It looked better that way, really, instead of all that extra wave I had in there. So I tried a different wave, and I kind of like that look a little bit better. So then I end up using that for the other side as well. Now, we're getting into one of the most difficult parts of this whole creation. For me, the wave was giving me the most trouble in the world. Trying to find a perfect wave along that flips in the barrel, looks like it's gonna be washed in the middle, or it looks like it was pushed to the side. It was just so difficult. So I ended up finding this one, and it just looked pretty cool. It was clean. The sky didn't have too much going on in it, and then the barrel was good enough where it was like, okay, I can kind of see through it, and I can kind of finesse this one a little bit. So that's kind of really what I went with. Same thing that you did for the wave break, you're gonna use for the wave ocean pulling up, is gonna be that Control T. I used another set of lines of where or how high I wanted the waves to be, and these perspective is coming from looking on. So like if you were looking into this wave, it'd be kind of higher at the top and be going lower towards the back because the depth of field works. And it's just a lot of playing around with it, but I really was trying to get it to align with that top line. Like I wanted that wave break to align straight across, so you just mask it out to as much as you need to. And then I tried to use some of the color range and select similar to erase that sky, because I'm not so worried about the splashes and everything, because we'll get to that. Then I went ahead and started masking out the bottom here. Like I said, just so it looks like it merges. It's merging in, the wave is merging into that wave break because it's been split now. Used another wave to kind of get a smoother blend at the bottom. There we go. And then I use different brushes too. Don't use the same hard brush for everything. Sometimes your brush needs to be a little bit softer so that you can paint away a little bit softer on it. And sometimes the brush needs to be hard so it's a nice straight line across. So play with different brush sizes for the softness and the different flows. I like how the wave crashed on these rocks, so I wanted to use some of those waves for the top of the wave break for the top of our ocean wall. So then all I did was mask out the rock, mask out the background, and then I just really wanted to keep the wave. And as you can see, it's giving like a stronger splash type. And then also I forgot to mention on this wall part, you can use the warp tool to warp that image exactly how you see fit. I didn't want the water to look so smooth and natural. Like I like the ripples in this wave here inside of the wave. So I wanted to add a little bit of that into it. I just like how it looked because I knew I was going to put like sharks and fishes in the ocean. I didn't want it to look completely empty. I felt like that was weird. So I added some of these ripples. And I'm not going to lie. Right here, I guess my computer started to get overwhelmed because it started tripping. I started getting all these red boxes, orange.
We've gone too far. There's too much to lose. We've got to keep our composure.
Now, granted, you guys, this file was getting pretty big at this point, and I was recording the screen, running Photoshop, and I think I got a few programs running in the back, but it would just give me like so many problems, so I had to shut it down multiple times. It eventually started working. I cleared up some space. After I fixed that, I went ahead and added some of those wave breaks at the top, and I set those to screen because I really only want the wave breaks. And now I was pretty satisfied with the wave overall. I felt like it fit into the triangle that I had and everything like that. So all I did was go ahead and group it up. And now I just started to adjust the group itself. Like I said, using the same thing I've been using, which is the perspective and the warp. I went ahead on DeviantArt or Brush Easy, one of those. And I went ahead and find some wave splash brushes. I just used some wave splash brushes to go ahead and give that more natural feel instead of trying to erase using the soft brush, because obviously it's only gonna give you like a rounded look. Masking out some of the wave breaks using an actual splash brush will give me that natural appeal. I use these same splash brushes later on too. Here at the bottom, I start using some of the wave brushes to paint on its own layer some of the splashing coming from the wave break, so it wouldn't be a clean break. It'd be some sort of wisping or wishing or splashing going on. I did want to add like some real waves at the top, and these ones came out really, really good. It gave me that really a watery, wet look. Now we're getting somewhere. Now that's when I started like, all right, it's coming together. Not even gonna lie. And like I said, you just gotta play with it, man. Mask on, mask off.
Wax on, wax off.
Get it? Mask on, mask off. Here we go. It's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty clean. I can't complain. I can't complain. I think this one I started to be like, all right, let's start placing some of the elements. So I throw Bossman in there in the ocean. And then this is when I felt like, all right, maybe I should move things back a little bit. So I started making more space for Bossman in the middle. As you can see, these green things are coming up on my computer. My computer started tripping again. I was like, yo, I'm gonna have to take it to Micro Center. What's going on with my baby? At this point, I'm like, I do have to color it a little bit because the waves look a little bit too like happy-go-lucky, like vacation waves, and we needed more like storm waves of clouds of darkness. So all I did was use like color balance, and I played with some of the settings. I kind of pushed it a little bit to cyan, a little bit into the blues in the mid-tone areas, and then I used some in the shadows as well. And then, you know, you always got to throw a curve on there. So I used a lot of that. I used the hue and saturation too. And obviously I desaturated it because, like I said, the blues were too blue. So we have to bring some of that saturation down. So if you guys want to look real quick to see what all I use right there, hue, saturation, curves, and color balance. That's it. Mask in some more of those wave breaks. Now, as you can see, the sand was looking a little bit too orange. You know what I'm saying? I felt like the sand would be a little bit more blue based on the atmosphere and stuff like that. So one of the sands looked kind of perfect. I kind of like the bottom sand, but I still didn't want to use just that sand. Like I said, part of stealing and using photo manipulation is to take a piece of photo and adjust it and merge it with other pieces of photo so it becomes its own original piece of art. All right. So what I did was I started, like I said, same thing, use color balance and hue and saturation to try to match the tones up a little bit. And now that looks pretty good right there. Now, like I said, you guys, his brand is a lot of sharks, slippery, stuff like that. So I found some sharks. I wanted to have clear ocean photography and then drop down the exposure, because obviously if it's going to be in water, you're not going to be able to see it clearly. And then you couldn't just use a blending mode for these because it just wouldn't look right. Drop down the opacity to make it fit. Now I felt like the background was pretty good. I felt like we had a nice strong base here. So all I did was collapse everything and put it on in one group. The last thing was I added a moon, and all I did was set the moon to screen, and it just fit perfectly with the ODM cloud layer. And then all I did was add a little bit of outer glow into that and a little bit of inner glow. And I used the eyedropper tool to grab some color from the actual clouds itself. So I felt like that worked perfect too. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. Now we get to the Bossman. First things first is you have to match the color to the background. Just grab the colors from the smart layer. I went up to neural filters and used the harmonization tool, and then clicked on that background layer that I just made, and I just adjusted it. So now the blues kind of match. Now we have our Bossman layer. One of the things I do learn about whatever the image that you're picking, if the sun is coming from the left and then your picture, the sun is coming from the right, it doesn't matter how much painting you're going to do, it's still not going to look right. So then eventually you would have to flip it or something like that. For this one, the lighting was just perfect actually for this type of scene. So I didn't really have to do too much to it. I just dropped that exposure layer to give me a good balance to start with. and then I just inversed, and now we just start painting back into some of those things. Now, you guys, for this particular part, everybody's kind of always asking, like, I know you guys see like different images out there and different covers and stuff like that, and like you wonder how they're getting so much detail and how does it look painted and stuff like that. They're using one of these. You need to get you one, okay? Link in the description. You can use the exact one I had. I did not spend a lot of money on this, but I needed to invest in another one. I did one about 2 years ago, and I lost my pad. So I have 2 pens. I lost the pad. I literally don't know where it went. But anyways, I went ahead and got another one, and I really went and spent some time practicing with it and getting comfortable with it, creating my shortcuts, putting it on the pad so everything was seamless. So a lot of this editing on this Bossman Dlow is done with the pen. I use the mouse for a little bit of it, but for the most part, the highlights, the painting, everything is with the pen. And then I went and downloaded the mega pack from Adobe to give me all these different brushes from Kyle, whoever he is. They were all free. So I created a daily draw group brush layer. The name of the game is speed. You don't want to be looking through 100 brushes when you're trying to do it. You generally only use 5 brushes, maybe variations of soft brushes, a few oil paints. So now all we're doing is going ahead and painting in on that exposure layer, painting the white onto the black. Now, second, we start and we have to do some of the curves. And for this one, I just used a preset of increase the contrast. I just go ahead and inverse that layer. So then we have control over the areas that have that contrast back that we want. And like I said, just using the brush layer to repeatedly brush. To get this look, play with the flow of the brush. It's not just about the opacity of the brush. It's the flow. It's the hardness of the brush, how hard you want these things to hit. Pause. So for me, the concept would be, it'd probably be darker towards the bottom and towards the front of him, because that's where the shadows would be coming in from the waves and all that other type of stuff. And then since the moon is out, it'd be coming from the back, hitting from the back.
I'm slipping, I'm bugging.
The lighting would be from the back and then over top of his head with just the exposure and the curves. This is kind of how you have it looking, but it still looks kind of flat. So now we have to start adding in the dodge and the burn layer. And now you want to create 2 different layers for a dodge, and you want to create a layer for the burn, okay? And you all want all these images or all these layers, you want them clip masked to the Bossman layer so they're only affecting him. So what you're going to do is go to 50% gray layer. And I started with dodge first, and I really just wanted to bring some highlights back into his face, around the glasses, and around the top of his head, because like I said, this is where we're painting in the light from the moon. The burn layer. So now we're bringing in some of that darkness, and I feel like it just brings in details from parts of the jacket and stuff like that. It just makes it darker. Bring back some of those dark details up underneath the face and stuff like that. So that's pretty much what the burn layer is for. And then I did adjust the opacities for some so they're not as harsh. Now, I created another exposure layer. And now this exposure layer, this is when we starting to bring in some of these highlights around the edges and details within the image itself. I went ahead and created a color fill layer. I used some of the colors from the clouds, and then I went ahead and used some of the blend if options. I just used a flat soft brush to start painting back in some of those highlights, because that's going to be the reflection from the waves, the water reflecting back onto him, because he's obviously wearing black and it's a shiny jacket. Now I used another set of blues to add bluer highlights. And now these ones, I felt like, okay, this one hits a little bit harder. Pause. Like, what do you want me to say, man? And now these is when I start really getting in there with the brush on the edges. And then for this, I didn't just pull it down. You can't just use the mouse and pull it a straight across line. Like, you have to paint it like it's a sketching, like you're drawing. Draw it. And then that's how you're going to get that like cartoony, painted, oil painted type of feeling. I felt like with the pen, I just had way more control. Now, this is when we start getting a little freaky with it. You know what I'm saying? I used another color fill layer. Instead of using any settings, I kind of just left it as is. And I just dropped that flow really, really low. And I just start pretty much just accentuating like highlights around him, in his face and stuff like that, to give it like a cartoon painted look. Like I said, that's like the theme for this. This pretty much took me one of the longest amounts of time. You gotta always add some shadows back into the shoes and stuff like that. I just created a new layer and painted with black. I'm still using the brush at this point in time to paint in some of these shadows underneath his feet. At this point in time, I'm thinking Bossman Dlow looks pretty good. Like, what y'all think? Leave a comment down below. Bossman Dlow at this point in time looks really, really good. Like, can't even fake, bruh. All right, so, but I was like, damn, the splashes look a little munch in the back. It just looks weird to me. So I was like, how do we bring some of that back? So I created a new layer, set it to linear dodge, and I painted in some white glows behind him. And yeah, I felt like that kind of hit a little bit better. It's like mist, or it's like fog, really. It's not, it gives it some sort of depth and some separation. Now all I did was copy the Dlow layer and then create a shadow by flipping it and creating a Gaussian blur, setting it to black and dropping the opacity down a little bit because like I said, the light is coming from the back, so obviously the shadow is going to be falling in front of you. And now at this point, I go ahead and collapse all the layers to the Bossman layer and the background layer itself. And now we got to start blending some of the colors together so all of the colors match together overall. So we're going to use a photo filter layer to accomplish that. I used a little bit of gradient maps too. Once again, my go-tos was my groovy gradients. I always use those for a lot of the stuff. I set different blending modes and I adjusted the opacity just a little bit to achieve this until I felt like, all right, I wanted like a dark night sky vibe. So that's pretty much what you're seeing here. And then now that I have a good strong tone and base for the overall image itself, now I can go back into the Bossman layer and adjust some of those exposure layers and add a little bit more highlights. End up adding another glow layer behind him because I didn't want to just add an outer glow. So I add another linear dodge glow layer behind him and I set the flow really, really low and I just started painting that in. And then for some reason his face looked like it was blending into the whole image. So I was like, how do I bring some more attention to his overall face without brightening up or adjusting any of the layers that I already had? So I was just like, let me set another linear dodge layer and I'm gonna paint it with red because his glasses were red. I just really liked it, to be honest. Like, there was no rhyme or reason. And since his eyes were glowing, I felt like it would be if that was the only thing glowing. So on that same layer, I did go ahead and add some like really, really low red highlights up and around like just his hand area because that's pretty much where the highlights and the glow would be hitting. And then I added some bling effects, his jewelry, to make the jewelry bling bling, you feel me? So by this time, I go ahead and collapse everything together and convert it to one main layer. And now I got one main layer and now I got to use camera raw filters, play with the exposure a little bit, play with the clarity, play with the texture, add a little bit of black vignette into the overall image to bring some more focus into the middle. And then by this time, I think we have a pretty good like image, yo. Like, if we look at the before and we look at the after, like, look at the difference. It's like night and day, literally. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of these images was taken during the day and now it looks like literally a night image. Fire. Now we just have to add a little bit of finishing touches, which is like some of the text, the grain and stuff like that. I really wanted to use yellow because I felt like yellow, blue, red would be cool, but then I end up like, it's just too much going on. Let me just stick to a couple of color palettes. Once again, if you watched my last video about minimal designs and why it works, is minimal and limited color palette. So I was like, let's just use the Wario textile from my 2000 game pack. I felt like it gave it like this Jaws looking stuff. So I looked at a couple of movie posters and they all use like red with the blues when anytime it had to do with like water movies and stuff like that. So it wasn't really a lot of movies that use yellow, only a couple, but like most of them all use red. So I just went with this red type of vibe with a simple text. If I was in charge and I like had a budget and everything like that, I probably would have just paid somebody to do some custom text or something for the name of the tour or the name of the graphic. And I probably would have reached out to a few of the designers I know to create like a custom text logo for this. But for time's sake, we just went with this. I think this joint came out pretty fire, if I do say so myself. From an idea to creating it, I used a few reference ideas. I used like this Moses type of art And like I said, this is where like AI and stuff like that comes into play. So in order to get this like wave ocean wall, it's not too many people taking pictures of wave ocean walls that you can see realistic. And then yeah, this is the masterpiece that we came up with, you guys. So yeah, man, I see you on tour, Bossman. Hey, if Bossman people are seeing this, bro, hit me, call me. And if you haven't listened to no Bossman Dlow, give him a shot. I've been listening to that Mr. Beat the Road OD, Too Slippery, Muscle Up is my favorite song. It gets me pumped up in the morning when I go for my walks and stuff like that. And I can't even play the song really because they gonna copy strike me. So that is unfortunate. But you know, I'm Molly Dope and I approve this message. I think that came out pretty fire. I ain't gonna lie. That's that splat. That's that splat right there. That's it for today. Please comment below. Let me know some of the album covers that impacted you growing up. Some album covers that mean a lot to you, or some iconic album covers that you saw growing up. The 2 cover artists that stood out to me when I was growing up was the first album I ever bought with my own money with my father was 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying. And that cover gave like a nice strong red tones to it. And it's just, I feel like iconic. Very simple, but iconic. And then the cover before that, I would say is Tupac's All Eyes on Me when he's sitting in that chair going like that. My parents really only had like 4 rap albums in the house. My dad listened to a lot of reggae growing up and stuff like that. So we had the Tupac album. I had the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Just give you a little, you know, backstory, you know. So yeah, those are kind of the covers that impacted me as a designer. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss a drop and so the algorithm knows it's lit. In the meantime, in between time, I'ma catch you next time. But remember, keep hustling, keep learning, and most importantly, man, keep creating. I'm Ali Dope, and I'm checking out. Yes, sir.